welcome. The show is in honor of. It's a show that we have great pleasure in bringing information to veterans and their families and updating them as to what's going on in the world of veterans. Okay. Today we have a very special show for me. We have a great friend that came to visit us, Mike Errigo. Mike and I were police sergeants together, and he actually broke me in as a sergeant. And what a gentleman, what a gentleman. And when he came through the door and said he's going to sit down and talk to us about his time in the military, I was really honored. John Bartow, always a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks for
John brings us up to date as to everything going on with the VFW, with the VA and
benefits
and things that are of great interest. And of course, my co-host Paul Dietrich, as always. How many years are we doing this now, Paul?
6, 7.
7 years. God bless. Yeah, but we've had a good run. We've done about 500 shows so far. And Paul, you're going to bring us up to date on something today, right?
Yes. Right now we have a priority for a lot of retired veterans, and it's called the widow's tax. And that's just the name of it. It doesn't mean anything other than the name that it's identified for in Congress. And I'll give you an example. Right now, if you are a veteran, a retired veteran with a less than 40% disability, what they do is they subtract from your pension from the Army your disability payment. And while that's wrong, I mean, the two are for two separate things. One is for serving for so many years, and the other is for being hurt while you were doing it. The really bad part about this is for the surviving widows, should the veteran pass, or widowers, the pension payment to them for the rest of their life is based on the pension payment to the veteran. So if your pension payment is reduced by a disability payment, that means that the widow or widower gets the equivalent reduction to the payment for them for the rest of their life. So basically what you're doing is taxing the widow to basically balance the budget of the VA. And we've been fighting to get this eliminated for years. And we are the closest we've ever been. In fact, we're the closest we've been in 20 years to getting this through. There are two ways that this could happen. Right now, our national defense is under a continuing resolution through the November timeframe. And that's really bad for the defense organization because they can't plan anything because you don't know how much funds you're going to have going forward. But if they approve a final budget, there are two sides to that final budget. One comes from the House, one comes from the Senate. In the House side, the House has already put in elimination of the widow's tax as a part of the Defense Authorization Act. If the Senate will simply authorize exactly the same in that final budget, the widow's tax will disappear. So that's the easiest way for this to happen. If our Congress, and we all know that they have not been able to agree with anything for quite a while, do not come up with a final NDAA, the other way that this can happen is there are two bills out there, one in the House, that's House Resolution 553, or Senate Bill 622. If those two will pass, then the same thing will happen because it will then pass by legislation. I ask that what you do is call your two senators here in New York because that's where the biggest contention is with the Senate. That's Senator Schumer. Their phone number is 202-224-6542. And Senator Gillibrand, 202-224-4451. And voice support for either passing the National Defense Authorization Act, eliminating the widow's tax, or pass the Senate version to eliminate the widow's tax. Either of those two works. Both of our senators here in New York have agreed, are supporting this legislation. but we just need more and more veterans and families to call so that we can continue to get the support so that this happens this year. So that's what we would appreciate your help. Call Senator Gillibrand, call Senator Schumer, tell their office that you support elimination of what's called the widow's tax, which unfairly takes money away from a surviving spouse of a deceased veteran. Okay?
Very
Thank you.
important that you do this, and I've said it on every show. There is a scope of influence that the number is 15 to 1. The people in the Senate believe that every time they hear from a constituent that he represents 15 total votes that he has influence over, okay? And if you multiply that by the number of people calling, if only 100 people call, well, they may not be that excited about supporting the bill. But if a couple of thousand people call, they're going to change their way of thinking about the bill. And that's how they make their decisions, and it's up to us to influence that. I'm sorry, Paul, you go.
That's exactly correct. What we need is we need a concerted effort right now to either pass, what would be the best way again would be to pass the National Defense Authorization Act to eliminate the widow's tax. The Senate version needs to contain that language, and then this goes away. The widow's tax portion of it goes away. The part where they still subtract the disability from the veteran's pension still stays in there, but this is a step in the right direction. This is the time to push it. November is when they're supposed to get back together and either agree on a National Defense Authorization Act, or again, push another continuing resolution, just kicking the can down the road like they've been doing for years. We hope that the final version of the NDAA includes elimination of the widow's tax. Okay?
Sounds to me like a good idea.
Yes.
Very good idea.
Absolutely.
Let's talk a little bit to Mike now. And Mike is not only a good, dear friend, but tell us about your time in the military. Is it all right with you if I tell your age? Mike's 92 years old, God bless him. And to me, he doesn't look a day over 50, but...
Well, I love you, Eddie. I think you're a wonderful person.
Tell us about your time in the military. Now, you were Air Force, am I right?
I was in the Air Force, United States Air Force, from 1945 until 1947.
So that was right after World War II.
Correct. I went into the service 1 month before the end of the Japanese War. And from there, I took my training, my specialized training at Shepherd Field, Texas. And from Shepherd Field, Texas, which is in Texas, I went to school for high-speed radio operator. And that's my MO while I was in the service. I was a high-speed radio operator. I wound up in Okinawa in a Quonset hut up on top of the hill where there was nothing but jungle and a Quonset hut with rats and centipedes that were poisonous. An 18-year-old kid, all by himself, up on a mountain near the jungle, and nobody in the vicinity but me. And it was an interesting time in my life. A scary time, yes, but a wonderful time. I enjoyed it every minute of it.
Now, you went to Manila first for training before you went to Okinawa?
Did I have basic training?
Yeah, no. And you went to Manila?
Yes.
Well,
I went to Manila to learn high-speed radio operating.
Okay.
I went there for 2 months, 2.5 months, I believe.
So when you were in that Quonset hut by yourself, what did they do? Drop parachutes with food for you? Like, here's your dinner?
I used to go down to eat, you know. But as far as the nighttime, that was my job up there. I used to communicate with the planes coming and going on Okinawa. And it was interesting because I got a few comps. I learned to buy scotch when I wanted a bottle of scotch. Other than that, it was a very interesting time in my life.
Now, you had said there were no walls. I think you said that, when we were talking in the green room that there was one building with a wall standing, and that was it.
Okinawa was completely annihilated when I got there. There was nothing, like I said, but one wall in the town, the capital, which was Naha of Okinawa at that time. That was the only wall standing. It was a complete destruction of Okinawa.
So.
And we had a contest. Our unit won the contest for having the cleanest office base in Okinawa. And as a result, they gave us a vacation, 2 weeks in Shanghai. We won, and our unit went over to Shanghai.
That sounds nice.
It was wonderful.
Yeah.
I had a great time in Shanghai. Too bad I didn't have enough money to buy my jewelry that I wanted to buy while I was there. But it was great being there.
So you had quite an experience being over there. Now, the other thing we were talking about is there were hardcore Japanese that were still in the jungle.
Yep.
That was a rumor.
Oh.
Only to frighten me, an 18-year-old kid, being alone in a Quonset hut up on a hill with nothing but jungle on either side. That was it. The guys in the unit, they forced, or how would you say it, fostered it or festered it. They made this year's story up to frighten me while I was up there. And they did a pretty good job of it. Because while I was there in this Quonset hut, there was rats jumping over the beams, you know,
Okay.
and red centipedes that were poisonous climbing up and down the walls, you know. So, you know, and all I had to sleep with was a cot and a net. The net used to cover my cot.
Right.
That's the only safeguard I had. I don't even believe I had a gun that time. That's how bad it was. But I survived. I was 18. I was 19 years old when I was in Okinawa. But I survived it, and I got through, and here I am,
Well,
back in civilization.
That's the important thing, that you survived, and you grew.
That's
I mean,
right.
you grew. I mean, you learned how to become independent.
Exactly.
Instead of the 18-year-old kid that was running up and down Richmond Avenue over here with his car, showing off for the girls, you were over there learning about ways of life and how to protect yourself, how to make
Correct.
it work.
That is so true. Very true.
And that's probably the most important thing that came out of the military, at least for me. I know it was. You mature.
Yes,
You
it was.
mature, and just by virtue of the fact that you have to. You can't survive if you don't. Right? So,
That's so very true. It was an experience that I don't want to ever experience again, believe me. Like I say, centipedes like this. You ever see a centipede that big? Red? Poisonous.
the red would scare me alone.
Yeah. And I slept in the same Quonset hut with all these animals, the rats and the centipedes. But that was it. I had to do it.
John, you got something to bring us up to date from the VFW as service officer?
Sure. Yeah. First, I'd like to say I'm honored to meet you, sir, and the centipedes would be it for me. I could handle almost anything. I could
Remember,
handle
your boot's
rat.
bigger than that.
Yeah.
Well, you were Air Force also, weren't you?
I was Army and Air Force. Yeah. But the centipedes, nope. See you later, buddy. I'd be out of there. I'd be AWOL.
Not too many people experience my thing.
I can handle. I think I'd rather have spiders than centipedes. You know.
Well, scorpions aren't too nice either.
Yeah, they're not nice either. No. But yeah, I can update you on a few things with the VA. Some major things that are happening in 2019. Okay. The VA is looking at, well, they have implemented the Mission Act. A lot of veterans were familiar with Veterans Choice that wasn't necessarily ideal. It was advertised as if you lived more than 40 miles from a facility, or if a facility took more than 30 days to give you an appointment, you could go to an outside provider. That was technically true, but the implementation of it was not ideal. You know, I don't think VA had the resources available manpower-wise still don't, to handle veterans saying, okay, you told me my appointment's in 31 days, I want to go to this doctor downtown, and figuring out who's paying who, and it wasn't working well. What does seem to be working well is this Mission Act, okay? This Mission Act is an expansion and enhancement of medical care for veterans, okay? Let me tell you what we're seeing at Albany, at Northport, and I would like any veteran listening to this, feel free to report back to me about your experience at the VA, whether it's at Fort Hamilton, Bronx, Manhattan. Let us know if things are improving there as well. What we're seeing is VA is starting to, first thing they're doing I really like is they're integrating complementary care. So chiropractic, acupuncture, yoga, massage, women's health, specific women's health stuff. They're really expanding that stuff, and it's getting nothing shy of impressive. It's really, really nice what we're seeing. Our medical center is pretty good size. Our neighboring medical center, which is only 100 yards away, is Albany. It's a major trauma center, Albany Medical Center. We're getting a lot of residents coming from Albany, coming over and augmenting our VA staff, which is also fantastic because you're getting top-rate care. You're getting technology upgrades to things like x-rays, MRIs, CAT scans. I went to a dental appointment the other day in the VA where their equipment was brand new, state-of-the-art, top-of-the-line stuff. We're starting to see a lot of improvements with VA healthcare, tons and tons. So that's all part of what this Mission Act is bringing to bear, and it's a good thing. Second thing, which I also love, and VA has impressed me, is the appeals modernization that went into place. So in the past, the veterans appeal was a linear process. It was straight up and down. You started appealing up, they kicked you back down, you kept appealing up until you got to the top. And many of you know that this appeals process could take up to 5 years to get until you were seen by the Board of Veterans Appeals. Their new system is built like a trident, and I'm not going to get into, instead of a line straight up, it's got 3 branches that you can choose from. And without getting into specifics, I will gladly address specifics with anyone who wants to give me a call, okay? But I want to talk about the benefit it gives to the veteran. The benefit it gives the veteran is much faster turnaround time with an appeal. Instead of an appeal taking months and years, we're getting some of these appeals back within a matter of a month. And it's also the fact that the workload is spread out now. The Board of Veterans Appeals is hearing cases almost within a year in some cases, which is
fabulous.
5 times faster than it used to be. Some of the old traditional lanes are still available for our vets, and we are there to help guide them through the process. A lot of it depends on what evidence they have to present, and a lot of it depends on whether or not I determine if the VA made a mistake, and I can effectively argue that that mistake was illegal, or improper. So we guide you through the lanes. Bottom line, though, I'm going to keep it to the bottom line with this, only in the interest of time. We like it as advocates for veterans. Our first priority is to protect you and help you. We like this new process. There's a lot of common sense involved. We actually get to talk to the VA. Mano a mano, on the phone. We're having discussions with raters, and it interjects a lot of common sense and a whole lot of advocacy. So we're real happy with that. So that's the Appeals Modernization Act. Call us for the specifics. We can help with the appeals. Last is Blue Water. Everybody knows about Blue Water. That started with House Resolution 299, and it was passed into law as 11623, meaning it's the 116th Congress.
Yep.
Passed it in June of this year. The Blue Water Navy Act extends presumptive service connection, meaning the same service connection that the guys had with boots on ground in Vietnam. It extends it to our brothers and sisters that served in the Navy within the 12 nautical mile offshore limit. So a lot of questions I get are, how did the Navy, or how does the VA going to determine if your ship was in that 12 nautical mile thing? Well, it's actually in the law. So what they did is they took the coast of Vietnam and they made points going down the vertical line of the coast of Vietnam. And we all know from geography class, Vietnam's coast kind of, goes in and has. So what they did was they picked certain points along the entire length of that coast and basically drew intersecting lines that go out 12 miles and so it matches the contour of the coast to within the 12 mile. Now our Navy veterans will recognize this. Where it really comes in handy is if your ship was on what they called a station. A lot of ships were on firing lines, they were on stations, and then carriers had launch points. One of the famous one is Yankee Station, right? Mm-hmm. They might have been outside the 12 miles, but that ship was steaming in let's say maybe a circular pattern or a figure eight, and encroached within the 12 nautical mile range. Also, big time benefits for the vets that were on destroyers and that were along the firing lines where they literally could see the coast of Vietnam. Right. We're going to have no problem getting them service connected if they have one of the conditions that were part of the Blue Water legislation, or part of the original Agent Orange legislation. So that's how VA is going to determine the points. Another question I get is an effective date. Okay, everything in a law that's passed by Congress directs the Secretary to take certain actions. Okay, and one of the things that the Congress directed the Secretary, and that's another word for saying the VA, they directed the Secretary to look at a claim that was denied based on the fact that this veteran was offshore and not boots on ground. So where am I getting? Claims can be denied for a number of reasons. You don't have a diagnosis. That's the biggest reason we see is, hey, you're claiming this, but you don't have a diagnosis, so we can't connect you. But let's say you do have a diagnosis. Example would be diabetes, type 2 diabetes. The VA denied you based on the fact that you were not boots on ground in Vietnam, okay? That, your effective date when you are now approved will be when you originally filed your claim. Because you were denied not for lack of diagnosis, you were denied because you were on a ship offshore.
Yes.
Yep. So that's a really nice thing.
Right.
So a lot of guys ask about that. There were no new conditions added, okay? It was just the definition of exposure.
Yep.
So the definition of exposure on land is the same. The definition of exposure on the sea has changed now because the VA finally figured out the wind blows from west to east.
And by the way, the water
from
the rivers flows into the ocean.
Yes. And,
that you then process to make your drinking water on the ship.
Yep, and water moves. So they figured that out.
Yep.
Second, the Congress directed the Secretary/VA to implement this process by 1 January 2020. The first step they had to do, they had 120 days to let the Congress know this is what we plan on doing, and they accomplished that. And then they have till 1 January to, get all the troops in line and get them ready to work these cases. So let's get to the bottom line. How does this affect our veterans? So if you were a Blue Water veteran and you have an Agent Orange condition, which Paul and I helped one today, right before the show.
Absolutely, today.
Yep, he had an Agent Orange condition. He was a Blue Water veteran. So we're going to put in his claim, And on 1 January 2020, well, it'll be 2 January because everybody's off for New Year's, the VA is going to start working these claims.
Very good.
Now, this is a new claim. He has never claimed before.
Yes.
Because up until this point, he knew it would be denied.
Yeah.
The disadvantage to him then is whatever compensation that comes from this will only be from the day that his claim gets filed, not from the day his claim was denied before.
Correct.
So if you're a Blue Water veteran out there, a Navy veteran, you need to apply now,
Yes.
because anything is dependent upon when you file, and not when it's approved, when you file. So you need to apply.
Absolutely.
Very important, John. How does somebody get in touch with you
Yes.
on any of the issues we've discussed
Okay.
today?
You want to give our office a call? It's 518-626-5687.
Right.
Once you get an initial contact with us, let's say you're a veteran that lives here, you live in one of the 5 boroughs. Once you get in contact with us, I will give you other phone numbers and other ways. That way we can be in contact. Because a lot of times I communicate with our New York City veterans in a different way. We end up text messaging a lot because I bop around the boroughs, and I try and link up with folks as much as I can down here. So I give you different numbers once we make that initial contact.
And John does travel to Staten Island. He does travel to New York City as needed to handle these cases. He's a rover.
Absolutely, yeah, I am a rover, and I
Actually,
enjoy.
it's the 4th or 5th time you're on the show.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I love it. Thank you for having
And
me.
we appreciate you coming back all the time.
It's my pleasure.
I'd like to take a few seconds out, and I'd like to thank you for your service, what you've been doing with the VFW for our veterans. I'd like to thank Paul. Paul is a lobbyist. He goes to Washington, D.C., he goes to Albany to lobby for these bills, and without guys like Paul and John, we would be lost. We'd have no one fighting our case, and obviously we're not going to be able to fight it ourselves. And I'd like to take a few seconds out to thank Mike Errigo for his service, because that's an awesome story. I mean, here you are a couple of months after World War II, and you're looking at what everybody else went through there, and it's amazing to bring that story back to us. So I'd like to thank you for coming on the show with us, and ask you to come back anytime you want, Mike. And
Well, thank you very much for having me.
It's an honor to meet you, sir.
I want to thank Mike for his time in the service. I also want to thank him for the service he gave for New York City with the police department. Sergeant for 30-something years, and like I said, he broke me in as a sergeant, and
Did a lousy job.
he did a great job, believe me. He really did. Well, you've been watching in honor of. It's our pleasure to bring you this information. We hope you can capitalize on it and use it as you need it. Hopefully, no one has the effects of Agent Orange, but unfortunately, that's not true. And there are a lot of people out there that really need help. So do yourself the right thing and
Call John.
Take care and call John. Get the ball rolling, because it's yours. You've earned it. Thank you. God bless you. Thank you for watching In Honor Of.